Let's create a terrain in our map. It's also known as displacement in Hammer. And the way displacement or terrain works in Hammer Source is you create the displacement from any world geometry brush that you have in your map. So anything that you have built from a simple cube, a simple sphere, can become a terrain. And let's begin. I'm going to use this brush that I placed in here, and the way you do that is by pressing the face edit sheet, and under displacement tab you're able to select the faces that you want to turn into your terrain. I am going to focus on the top face, but if you are creating mountains, if you're creating cliffs, you may want to select multiple faces. So let me demonstrate by selecting multiple faces what that does. By holding down Control, you're able to select many faces. So once I do that, I click on Create, and the displacement creation power pops up. You are able to what that does, it shows how tessellated you want your terrain to be. So power of 2 is good for the small brush. If you are creating more detailed terrain, you want to bring this up to 3 or 4, but keep it at 2 and 3 at the most. Click OK, and it shows in here, it tessellates and creates all the vertices that we're able to pull and push to create that terrain. If you go back, let's say you've been working on your terrain back and forth, and you want to put it back as a brush. Click back on displacement, click on destroy, and it brings your brush back. Okay, so let's go into detail about each one of the options under displacement. So let's just create the top face and click create. I want 2. And another thing, the faces that we did not select, we can see they're gone now. And another thing about displacement, that it does not protect against leaks. So your displacement map will have to be blocked off by world geometry. So let's just raise and lower our terrain and just modify it so it looks like a little hill. Go back into displacement and click on paint geometry. Displacement paint geometry tool pops up, and you have a few options. Effects, you can raise or lower, you can raise to a certain level, and you can smooth your terrain. When you begin working, click on raise or lower and work in a single axis, either X, Y, or Z. And the way you know which way is which, once you select it, you are able to see yellow arrow. And what that does, it shows you which way you're going to be pulling your vertice and your terrain to. So at this point I want to raise and lower, and I choose Z, and it shows you a little arrow going up or down. Distance is the strength of how high or lower you want to influence your geometry, and radius shows how big the brush is. So if I bump this up, you can see how huge the brush gets. So you want to lower it or raise it depending on your terrain. And also I'm able to select soft or a hard edge brush. So I'm going to start with soft. Distance I usually work depending on your terrain. I'm going to choose 2, and radius a little higher. So now I'm going to raise or lower, and the way you do that is left mouse button and tapping on the left mouse button raises the terrain, and if I press the right mouse button it lowers it. Left raises it, right lowers it. So let's just shape our terrain and raise it up a bit. And you're able to kind of drag over and click and shape your terrain really quick. Let's lower some of this. You also may help to texture your terrain, so you're not working with the default developer texture. And the way you do that is, let's close this off. So now we can see we have a little terrain going. It looks pretty good. And let's click on this and let's face edit sheet, browse, and let's select something like grass, or we can choose rock. So let's select one of these, apply it, and now we can see it. And you can always go back and you can always edit by clicking on displacement, paint the geometry, and you can always paint alpha. And what that does, it goes back between the two textures. I'll cover that a little bit later. So you can go back and you can edit your geometry a little further. And if you don't like what you created and you want to go back to your default brush, you can always destroy it and it'll go back to your cube. And another thing I want to mention is noise. So you can create this works if you have a large terrain and you want to create from a flat terrain into little bumps everywhere, so it's different all over the place. And max and minimum will give you, so just once you apply it, it just creates a difference into your terrain. So that is how you create a very basic displacement in your map.